Keith will be joining here in 1 minute.
This spell depressing or alarming.
Okay, you're all set.
Thank you, Max. Welcome to tonight's Ad Hoc Reappraisal Committee meeting, February 9th session. I'd ask anybody that hasn't already done so to go ahead and mute their devices unless you're speaking. And we will get started. My name is Christina McEntee, and I'll be your facilitator tonight, walking you through the meeting. I'd like to start off our session tonight with a reading, the excerpt from the Board of County Commissioners resolution regarding the charge of this committee. Whereas recognizing that legally required tax assessments of real property and the reappraisal process are confusing and largely misunderstood, and in light of the recent charges that the process is not equitable, this board desires to create an ad hoc committee with the goals of this committee that align with the county's racial equity action plan to include to identify citizens' concern, provide guidance on future assessments, and provide input into equity concerns. Just to review our agenda, we'll have public comment first, followed by open discussion to finalize our bylaws for the committee. And then our community and public engagement team will review their outreach efforts on the reappraisal for 2021 and for the survey that recently went out. And then Keith will present his part 2 and also have an activity, and we've slated the last hour for that. All right, Max, I believe we have one person at this point signed up for public comment. And as a reminder, this is a time for you to share your thoughts, comments, and concerns to the committee. They will hear you, but will not respond back. You will have 3 minutes to speak. And if you wouldn't mind to state your name and the area of the county that you live.
Okay, Anna, you should be good to go.
Give Anna just a minute to get on.
She should be connected. Are you on mute, Anna? It looks like Anna left.
Okay, just let me know if she shows back up. We at a time we can pull her back in. Is that the only public comment we have for tonight? Signed up?
They are, it looks like they're trying to reconnect right now.
Okay.
But yes, that is the only one we had sign up.
I'm happy to wait just to.
I'm speaking slowly to give her.
I know that technology, right?
Yes, they are connected. I'm going to
Perfect.
allow her to speak again.
Great.
Okay, she should be there now.
Hi, Anna. If you state your name and what area of the county you live. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Anna must be having some technical difficulties. So Anna, if you're listening and you're unable to connect, you can always leave a voicemail and the transcript will show up for the board to see. They disconnected again, so I would just move ahead.
Okay. Let me know if she shows up and maybe drop something in the chat. I can't always keep up with the chat, so if you'll just let
I'll
me
do
know.
that for you.
Great. All right. I would like to remind committee members to submit their randomly selected parcel numbers into the chat if you have not already submitted to me in advance of this meeting. Please choose 3 to 4 parcel numbers from the attachment that came to you by email. I resent that today. The document name is Random Sample of Sales. So if you'd like to participate in the activity later on, please drop those in the chat if you haven't already sent them to me. If you sent them to me, then we got them and we will use them for the activity when Keith is presenting. All right. So now we'll move to our next agenda item, and that is to finalize our committee bylaws. We've slotted 15 minutes for any discussion and finalization of the bylaws, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see each other as we're chatting about the bylaws, and then reconnect to the program once we finish that subject. So let me stop share. And
Christina?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Jonathan. Sorry. Can I maybe toss something out real quick for the committee and for you and Burnett to maybe think about? Is just because we only have 4 committee members at this point that are on the call, I don't know that I feel comfortable moving forward with that, like a vote on the bylaws, just based on the amount of participation we have at the moment. And I don't know if it's going to get better later tonight, whether folks are just getting off work or whatever. But maybe could we table this part of the discussion until maybe later? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any of the other committee members see that differently?
This is Bobette. How many members do we have that are here? I thought that more people had joined in now. You don't have enough?
I'm counting 5.
We have
This
5, and Ori is not present tonight. He let us know ahead of time, and he did give input into the bylaws that I can share if you all want to take on that subject. Otherwise, I'm happy to move it to the next meeting.
This is Brenda Mills. I'm sorry. We don't want to move it to the next meeting. We've been told about these bylaws for the last 3 months. If we're just missing 1 or 2 people and they've given their feedback, I think we need to move on.
Okay. So I will open the floor for discussion and share Ori's feedback.
Okay.
Let me pull that up. He said, I think the bylaws look good as is. Thanks again for getting this draft together. I know there was some discussion on whether there would be a board chair or vice chair for the committee. He said that he does not have an opinion on this one way or the other, but if the committee decides to have a board chair or vice chair, he would like the opportunity to be present to vote on these positions, but he would understand if the board wants to move forward with this evening. So that was his response. So I'll open it up to committee members. for discussion.
I'm fine with the bylaws the way they're written. So I was just trying to give lend some support to making sure everybody else had a say on it. But I'm good to go with what's written on the bylaws.
Thank you, Jonathan. Brenda, you have your hand up?
This is Brenda. I'm good as they are written. If we vote on them today, we don't have to be voting on the chair and vice chair today. That could be sometime later or next meeting. So I'm good with the way they're written, and we really appreciate the effort staff made to put these together.
Very good. Thank you, Brenda.
The only comment that I have, this is Miriam. The only comment, and I'm not sure who brought it up last time, but I guess I'm just a little confused why we would need a chair or a vice chair since we have you guys as moderators to kind of keep the process going. And or does that make sense? So like, I just kind of don't understand why we need a chair and a vice chair to adjourn and to keep people on task and not let them speak beyond 3 minutes and that kind of thing. So that's my only comment. I don't see that that's necessary for us because we're a committee. You know, we're just a committee. We all have input. Everybody's input matters. And so that's just the only comment that I have about them.
I was going to say the same thing, Miriam. I'm a little confused on the role of the chair and the vice chair, since we do have the facilitator and we have, you know, Christina keeping us on track and Burnett and all. So that's my same thought.
And this is Bobette again. I think that I remember what Miriam said, that we discussed it before about not having a chair or a vice chair. I think that was something we discussed probably at the beginning. And then I think I brought it up again when you passed us out the last meeting that we have. I don't think that we need to have that because we do have facilitators. We are a committee. We all have a voice, and I just don't think it would be necessary. That's my point of view.
Okay. And so.
Hey guys, this is Debbie, and I'm
Oh, hey,
driving, so my
Debbie.
apologies. And I've been listening. I just couldn't get on my phone, so I could not get my iPad to log on to Zoom. So my apologies. But as hard as I tried, I could not get finished with some clients. So I will be back to a stopping point within about 20 or 30 minutes, and I'll get on a different computer. But I agree with what Bobette just said. I think we had talked about that before as well. And unless there's some structural issue that I'm not thinking about or don't know about, I agree. You guys facilitate, so I would assume that would be basically the same role as we would need as a chair.
Thank you, Debbie.
As much as I really like being called Madam Chair. I'm kidding.
With a gavel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to circle back to Jonathan. Do you see that differently, Jonathan? I think we've heard from everybody else on the subject of the chair and the
Sure.
vice.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it either way, honestly.
Okay. So
It doesn't change our work here, so I'm
Right.
good either way.
So striking the sections of chair and vice chair, does the committee accept the bylaws as written?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. All right, you have bylaws, people. I will share my screen again. Get back to the presentation. Max, was Anna wanting, she put her comment in the chat?
I put it in the chat for the Zoom call so you can all read it. Would you prefer that I read it out loud, or do you all just want to, it's kind of longer, or would you prefer to just read it during the meeting? It's in the chat for the Zoom call.
Okay, if it's in the chat, then we will get that to the committee members.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. All right. So Last Friday, I sent the committee members 2 documents that provided detailed outreach efforts made by the Buncombe County Communications and Public Engagement Team for your review. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the CAPE team to walk us through the highlights of these efforts. Lillian?
Thank you so much. Last week we sent you some pretty thorough reports, and so I won't go through those, in detail, but if we can go to the next slide, then we'll just do a quick overview on what we did around the reappraisal communications. And the timing of this one is a little bit difficult because we started with one plan, and then the onset of the pandemic meant that we needed to change course. And so we started working on this back in 2019 to communicate about the upcoming reappraisal. I will say that that was before I was here. So if you ask me any super hard questions about it, I may need to phone a friend. But we did launch this new website, buncombecounty.org/myvalue2021. And we saw that that website got a lot of traffic, 25,281 views. And interestingly, people were spending about 2.5 minutes on the website. So that's a good amount of time for a web page to have people spending time on it. We also created the guide to reappraisal, and we distributed that to about 50 community organizations, hard copies in English and Spanish, but also we tapped their e-newsletter distributions so that they could help amplify that messaging as well. We included the information in our newsletter that goes to about 6,000 people. And then we also did a direct mail to about 15,000 property owners. And of course, 15,000 is not anywhere close to what our Buncombe County universe is. However, that's about the number of people who hadn't indicated any improvements to their properties in the last 10 years. So wanted to make sure that we were targeting them directly to go to that site and make sure that their property was aligning with the new reappraisal coming down the pike. We also utilized social media heavily for this information, and I'll come back to that on why it's important. We did a lot of targeted community meetings. We met with the legacy neighborhoods, not just at the beginning of the process, but came back to them again a couple months later in the process. One of the things that is not unique to us, but certainly any organization, found that with the onset of the pandemic, stickiness of messaging or information was a really hard barrier to overcome. People had a lot of concerns about their safety, their family's safety, their loved ones, work insecurities. And there were a lot of question marks just in everyone's day-to-day life. So being able to have those messages resonate and be sticky with people, it was a little difficult. So we wanted to make sure, especially with our legacy neighborhoods, that we were being as accessible as possible. We also held an online town hall. We call those Let's Talk. Our Let's Talk with Keith Miller around the reappraisal process had 1.1 thousand views. So we know we got a lot of people who were able to sit and hear that conversation, ask questions, have them answered in real time, even though we weren't in person. It was broadcast over Facebook. It was something that and Zoom, we could easily answer people's questions in real time. One of the things that I think makes these Let's Talk town halls most effective is it takes it takes kind of the government lingo out of the work that we're doing and turns it into a real conversation about what it means to the individual. And so it's a real conversation, questions answered in real time. Certainly the media was a big piece of amplifying the messaging around the reappraisal. And we had coverage from all outlets. So not sure if anyone tuned into the Board of Commissioners briefing last week, but during that briefing, we actually got survey results from a community survey that had a scientific sampling of Buncombe County residents. And it was a pretty long survey. It took people about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. However, some of those questions in that survey were around, how do you get your news? What is the most important way for you to get information about Buncombe County so that we can make sure that we're investing our activities and our communication tactics in the right avenues? So what we found through that survey is that majority of respondents use our website. That's great. People go to our website to get information about us. They also go to TV news, social media, and then word of mouth is how they get their information. But 4 out of 10 respondents in this scientific sampling prefer the website and or local news to get that information about us. So that's going back to, why it's important that we launched this website with information, why it's important that we had media coverage from our local television and other outlets, and why it's important that we use social media to help get that message out so that we could ensure that we are taking these best practices. We know that you have 4 out of 10 who prefer that, but that still means that 6 out of 10 prefer something else. So that's why we use a wide array of tactics to help get that information out. Moving on to the survey. And so one of the things, the graphic got me. We wanted to make sure that this survey gets in front of as many people as possible. Happy to report that at this point we have about 800 recipients. While it's not a scientific sampling, that is more people responding to this survey than we saw included in the scientific sampling that we had for the public input. So it doesn't translate into apples and apples because that one was scientific and we were trying to make sure that we match the demographics, and this one is based on people who want to participate. But 800 people, especially when we had the SWOT analysis at the beginning of this process of all the things that would be strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats around this around the Ad Hoc Reappraisal Committee. Seeing 800 people so far and still more than a week to go to respond is really significant. We've had that earned media from Mountain Express, Citizen Times, Biltmore Beacon. Today I was on the phone with Caitlin Penner from WLOS. So we know that local TV news also engaged in this process. We're using our direct text. We found through our community survey that direct text is really important. So I would be remiss if I didn't put in a plug here that if you want to be on the list for those direct texts, just text BC alert to 99411 and you will be signed up to receive those texts. We had about 2,000 people that we texted this information to. We use that website. We know that that's one of the key pieces of information for our community. Social media, we've got a great following there. Nextdoor is another place where we try to make sure that we're utilizing this information. We've got 72,000 members on Nextdoor. So we know that if we can get information to people on that platform, it's very helpful. Our newsletter, like I said, we've got 6,000 people who receive that newsletter. And it ends up in their mailboxes every week. One of the things, the trends that's coming out of the pandemic in terms of the public relations and communications world, I was just reading in an article today in one of my newsletters that newsletters, people are relying on those more than they did maybe 2 years ago because of what a useful tool they've been throughout the pandemic. We also started putting, when you go to the movies and you sit down, sometimes there's a slideshow or there's advertisements. So while we're waiting for our Board of Commissioners meetings to start, we've started showing slides with information, including this survey. So while people are waiting for those commissioner meetings, we can target that audience. We know that we generally have a pretty significant viewership on those Board of Commissioner meetings. So that's a great opportunity for us to get this in front of them. We've also started showing it on the TVs at the libraries. So folks who come in, turn a book, get a book, use a computer, it's rotating during that time while they're there. Our ad hoc meetings are averaging about 500 views, which is good. And so certainly we've got a plug right now live on Facebook to take our survey and participate there. One of the great opportunities that we have is a partnership with WRES. And every other week we have 30 minutes where we sit down and talk about a topic. Today's topic was this committee and the work that this committee is doing. And Keith Miller sat down and talked with our hosts about that. And so even if you don't catch it live, one of the great things about it is WRES continues to replay that throughout the next 2 weeks until the new episode airs. We've also started collecting the recordings of those, so that we can amplify that through podcasts or other avenues. We are partnering with the reparations process to make sure that information from this committee is going through that committee as well. I know when we met with the Stumptown residents, this survey went out before them. And so we had hard copies that we were entering. And then we have really great partnerships with the faith leaders, and folks on our team work to communicate information to them so they can amplify it through their congregations. And it's also a good opportunity for them to come back and ask us questions. So those are just some of the ways that we have been working on the community input survey. And now I would like to turn it over to this committee for you to provide us with any feedback that you have, avenues that you would like us to explore, places that you want to make sure we get this out. We've got some days left, and we've got a team of individuals who's standing by ready to help work on this.
Yes, this is Bobette. I see that with your media coverage with Mountain Express and Citizen Times, I would say in the African American community, one of the forgotten media outlets would be Urban News. A lot of people I know, especially with me doing a community engagement market at my church, we actually, people come in and they look for the Urban News. And I think that would be a very, with Johnny Grant, that would be a very good way to get out information, because they'll read that. I'm not going to say too many people read Mountain Express. Citizen Times is limited now, but I know she makes sure that she gets it out to all of the churches. And I think that would be really good for information as we move forward.
Thank you.
Lillian, I concur. I do want to, if I can find the email, I'll forward it to you. I know it only gets printed once a month, and then she has some hard deadlines. Do you have that, or would you like for me to? Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. You okay, Brenda?
That's how I think. My eyeballs are rolling. Well, I was trying to think, are there other things? I know you sent, it looks like you guys are using Nextdoor. There's also the neighborhood services page on the City of Asheville's website. You can directly email those neighborhood contacts to let them know. So I can put the link in the chat for you.
Great. And I'm writing down everything that's being suggested here so we can follow up.
You're awesome.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm curious because it seems like you've been pretty thorough here trying to reach out to most of the organizations, media, print, what have you. Yet we still find that there's a certain segment that falls through the cracks, for lack of a better word. Do we have any idea as to what that segment is and how big of a crack that gap is?
Well, I wish that I had a simple answer to that. We have digital divides. We have people who don't understand the technology that we're using. Certainly the pandemic helped us move the dial on the technology divide. Even my dad is FaceTiming now. So that's a significant move forward. But we still have some of that divide. We also have a divide around just interest, right? Sometimes people don't know what they don't know, and so if they aren't aware of how it impacts them, maybe they are just getting into the market as a first-time home buyer and haven't had experience with this, then it might be something that they don't know that they need to know. So those are the two big areas that I see as tough ones for us to bridge, but ones that are important for us to continue. With the latter group, that's where our social media comes into play, and we're working on developing a new strategic social media process so that we can be more targeted on demographics of who we're trying to reach and put some dollars behind that so that we can overcome the throttling that happens with social media and the way that they have their algorithms written, so that organizations like ours sometimes have to pay a little bit in order to get information in front of people.
This is Jonathan. I'm sorry. Is there, I was thinking like On Track Financial. I know they've got a huge newsletter that goes out, and I'm just thinking that, especially, and they used to do a first-time home buyers class, and they may have a huge list of folks that have been through that program in the past, that they might be able to get that out as well. So that was just one of the things I was thinking about. And then when you say faith-based leaders, I'm assuming that that's across all religious and denomination, all that good stuff. So Christian, Islamic, and then the only other thing I'll add is I didn't see anything on this this graphic that addresses maybe folks that that are not that English is not a first language. So maybe I know there's a couple of Hispanic newspapers in town that may be a good, maybe not for this application because it might be too late, but maybe just in the future, maybe branch out to one of those media outlets too. So.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. One of the neighborhoods who we've been meeting with in this process is the neighborhood called Emma. That is primarily a Latinx neighborhood. However, one and done is not the way to go. So that's really good feedback. So I'll add that to our list.
Great. And I will say the list looks very comprehensive. So thank you for your work.
Any other suggestions?
Did we ever come up with the cost? I know it was going to be pretty, this is Debbie, pretty hefty of actually just mailing all taxpayers.
Well, you have, that is a significant cost with more than 250,000 people to get that information to. So I will say when we mailed out information around the, when we mailed out information around the homeowner grant program that went out with the tax bills, just simply adding that insert was more than $50,000.
Wow. Okay.
The only thing I would add, Lillian, is that direct emails to neighborhoods is a good idea. The other one is, you've heard of the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods?
Yes, ma'am.
You sent stuff to them directly? Because they're a good group. I mean, they don't represent, all neighborhoods, and neither do we have a contact for all neighborhoods, but they're a really good group to kind of reach out to, especially, their interest is in neighborhoods. But a lot of the legacy neighborhoods either have, which is really great, they either have like robocall. I know Shiloh can reach about 100, what is it, Bobette, like over 160 of their residents.
Yeah.
Burton Street has a robocall. East End has a excellent email. So most of what you send them directly, they will send directly out to their constituents. So that's still a good way to reach them. So I think kudos to you guys for what you're doing in your engagement team.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other resources that we have is just the connections of our staff, you know, especially on our public engagement side, Rashida McDaniels, Leonard Jones, Zakia, Bell, Rob, when they are making phone calls and burning up the phone lines on important issues. And the great thing about them is whenever they call someone, the person on the other end always picks up. So we're really fortunate in that regard.
And the medium with RES is very effective. I got interviewed for reparations, and then they've done some things since. And so I'm getting texts, I'm hearing stuff, and it does play for 2 weeks until the new session comes out. So we're getting a lot of bang for our buck. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has just been a wonderful opportunity for us. So thank you.
What about the Chamber of Commerce and/or the Board of Realtors?
I know that we include them both on our press release distribution list, so they are getting those press releases. But I'll have to circle back and make sure that we're doing an intentional outreach to both of those, like the direct emails that Brenda was referring to that are so effective with neighborhoods. Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other points of feedback from the committee, we will say thank you very much, Lillian, for this report out. It was very helpful, very engaging, and we got a lot of good feedback from it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And along the lines of the survey, we were able to pull together the another survey check-in for you all, and I'm going to hand it over to Burnett to walk us through this.
Good evening, folks. So just a quick touch base in terms of where some of the demographics are coming in terms of the respondents. As Lillian alluded to, we had about 800 folks who have fully taken the survey, and there's roughly about 500 comments as well, looking at the data. Looking at the race and ethnicity of folks that have responded, you can see that little pie chart in the lower left represents the breakdown. Unfortunately, more than half of the folks have chosen not to identify nor respond or provide a race. But looking at it, roughly 2% of the respondents are Black, 39% are white, and we have 1% Hispanic, and then we have an all other category as well too. And then looking at in terms of the geography with regards to neighborhoods, once again, there's a pretty large percentage of the folks that chose not to identify with a neighborhood. Of those that did, you can see the highest percentage is coming from North Asheville, followed by East Asheville, and then you can see some distribution across some of the other neighborhoods. I think the one takeaway for me with regards to the breakout across the different neighborhoods, we're not seeing one neighborhood dominating the responses. So it is pretty distributed across a large swath of the neighborhoods. So we're not seeing one neighborhood dominate those responses. Anybody have any questions? All right, hopefully we'll see that number of respondents continue to grow by the next time we check in. And Lillian touched on it earlier. I think we're getting some really meaningful results out of this. So it's super encouraging.
Thank you, Burnett. So our final agenda item for tonight, we welcome back Keith Miller and staff for part 2 of his presentation on our local property assessment office. And so Burnett is going to pull up the presentation. And I'll turn it over to Keith once that presentation is shown.
Thank you, Christina.
All right, can you guys all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
So we're going to start
Yes.
with I'm sorry, somebody say something? In this part 2 section of answering the questions that came up from our last meeting. So we're going to walk through some of those. So next, Burnett. This is the one where we talked about Biltmore taxes not included on the Buncombe County tax bills. And if you remember, the conversation was around Buncombe County tax collector does not bill nor collect for the town of Biltmore Forest. So if you go on our website and you look up a tax bill of someone who may live in Biltmore Forest, what you're going to see is most likely just the taxes for the county. You would not see any taxes that were related to Biltmore Forest. So we did add here for someone's recommendation, we added in our disclaimer. When you go on there and search, you will see the sentence there now that says Buncombe County does not bill or collect revenue for the town of Biltmore Forest. Please contact town of Biltmore Forest directly for additional tax information. So that was in response to your question about that. Next. So now let's talk about appeals. We talked about this some the last time, and I think you wanted me to bring back some numbers, and we'll talk a little bit more about where these are coming from. So what I did here on the slide is I gave you a comparison for the 2017 and the 2021. Remember, in 2017 was the prior reappraisal, and then the 2021 reappraisal. So this gives you a comparison of those counts of appeals. And you can see for total 7411 for 2017, 5757 for 2021, which was a decrease of about 22%. And then I give you the other numbers: improved, decreased 23%. And when I say improve residential, that means any residential lots or land that has a structure on it, single family or otherwise, would be included in improved residential. Vacant parcels, minus 17%, improved commercial, 32%, and then other, which would have been anything not included in the upper 4 categories of less 42%. However, I think the question last time that we talked about was that the 22% change in the total number of 7411, 5757. Is that any questions on that? Next. So we put together this information source, a graphic for you to look at. So let's look at the chart on the left-hand side. And what you're going to see here in this chart is looking at the parcel counts and the appeal counts. And this chart's showing you the evidence that the majority of the appeals, the appeal counts, the yellow line on the graph, and the counts are the blue bars. So you can see that the majority of the appeals that get filed are in that $150,000 to $300,000 range, and then the next largest will be to $300,000 to $500,000. And that's not surprising. You know, that's typical of what you're going to see, because that's where probably most of the parcels in the county fall within the valuation. Then if you go over on the right-hand side, you'll see in the blue bars are again the appeal counts, and then the yellow line is the appeal percent of the parcel count. So again, that 150 to 300 to 500, that's again showing you that the largest account of appeals were in those sections or those categories. And then it shows you that the largest percent was in this category of the 1.5 million plus. So a larger percent, of course, coming from those larger valued properties. And that probably can also be contributed to the fact of the difference in the counts. So here, the takeaway, the greater percent of the higher value homes are filing appeals compared to the lower value homes, which shows you on that yellow line on the chart there. Next. So again, the chart on the left, percent of appeals by appraised value with reduction. So again, we're in that category that you can see the 500 to 750. The notes there, 67% of appeals filed led to a decrease in the appraised value. Approximately 80% of the appeals in the 500 to 750 appraised value category received a reduction compared to 50% in the less than 150 category. So again, if you look at the bar, the blue bar in the middle, 500 to 750, you see it's almost up to 80%. So it's telling you all the appeals that in that category, 80% of them got a reduction. You go over to the other categories of 150, about 50% of those got a reduction. The graph on the right-hand side, so the blue bar is showing you the median reduction amount. And then the yellow will show you the reduction as a percent of appraised value. So again, the takeaways here, 80% of the appeals in the 500 to 750 appraised value category received a reduction compared to the 50% of the 150 category. And the lower value homes receive a higher reduction as a percentage of home value. That's the chart on the right. That's what the yellow line will show you, is that the percentage of change in the lower value categories were higher than in the higher categories. This is non-surprising. This is kind of what we expected to see. And we've talked about some of that before. Next, Burnett. So this is the GIS online interactive map. Everyone should have got the link sent to you in your email. And this should have opened up on your computer to where you can see the interactive different areas here of a filed appeal. Now, if you go, Miranda is going to show us a little bit of a demonstration on how that interactive map works. So I'm going to let her do that now, Burnett, and I guess you need to share her screen so everybody can see her demo.
Hey everybody, my name is Miranda Stewart. I'm the Land Records and GIS Manager for Buncombe County. And wanted to give you guys a brief demonstration of this dashboard so you can understand how to kind of interact with that data. So, is everybody able to see the dashboard?
Yes.
Perfect. So, obviously the main component is going to be your map. Each one of these multicolored dots represents an appeal that was sent to our office. Now, all these colors correlate with the value category. So all of our red dots, those are going to be the homes that were valued $300,000 to $500,000. Our blue is going to be our $150,000 to $300,000, and so on and so forth. You've got your main filters at the top, which are going to be either by the area that it was appealed in, or by the result of that appeal, so whether it's decreased, increased, no change. And if we look at those, they're in alphabetical order. And if we pick one at random, say East Asheville, your map will automatically zoom to the area so you can see the data that you're looking at in greater detail. And again, we'll see just that area filtered out. You can do multiples. So if you wanted to see East Asheville and the Central Business District, you can do that, and they'll turn on and off for you. Your map will also zoom accordingly if those areas are pretty spread out. Now, if we want to add in which ones are decreased, those were all the appeals that resulted in a decrease. And if we go to increase, oh, there wasn't too many in that area. Now, our secondary filters are going to be our statistical pie charts over here on the side. We've got property type, so whether it's a condo, townhome, residential home, we can click that slice of the chart and see all of the residential appeals. If we just want to see townhomes, we can do that as well. Same thing with our value category. If we just want to see homes that appealed that were in, say, under 150,000, our map will filter that for us. And our very bottom are just some counts. That's so you can see which appeals were decreased, which ones were increased. And these are all going to interact together. So if we choose just Chandler, our pie chart is going to change to show us what's in our filters. So you really can interact with the data to find what you're looking for. Got a couple extra things, including a tab that will show you those individual appeals. So we have 3,780 total, and you can click through each one of those. And of course, whichever filters you apply are going to change which ones you're able to view. And our last tidbit is just a little info screen. So if you need some additional help or forgetting how all these filters work, there's a little how-to there for you. Are there any questions about working with the dashboard and interacting with that data? Kind of a new platform.
How long has this been available?
We just created this about a week ago, so it's pretty new. Yeah.
I will say it looks easier when you help us do it. So thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Miranda, can we go back to an area there south of town and focus in on that for a second?
Absolutely. Anyone in particular?
Actually, why don't we just, right, yeah, go with Shallow, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate this, that these are the appeals in that polygon. You see sort of that tan shaded area. So each one of those dots are an appeal. And this map is also to answer the question that I think that Jonathan brought up, was that were there any areas that we saw appeals that were clustered or any areas that have more than others? So you're welcome to click through these different neighborhoods and take a look at that and see how they're scattered, or if there's any of them that are clustered and what those neighborhoods might be. I think, can you also interact with the dot, Miranda?
You can. So you can either select the polygon to see the name of what the area is, or you can select that dot as well. It will stack them, so you may need to click this little next button and it will show you the information for that appeal.
Okay. Yeah, so if you want to see what one of those dots might be, if you think one of them is maybe near your house or something that you're interested in, then you can actually click on the dot and actually see the data that's related to that that appeal, what the parcel is. So it's a great interactive tool to be able to see appeals. I hope you guys will take some time to look at it. If you need a little bit more instruction, a little more tutorial time, we're happy to provide it. So you guys can just let us know what you need there.
Can I ask a question, Keith? It might sound kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this in South Asheville where Biltmore Forest is. Why are they on here as part of the appeals process when they're a whole township that was not reported to Buncombe County because they take care of themselves?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question.
I'm looking at the chart and I see where it says it has some little dots over here by Biltmore Forest. And I'm wondering what causes them to be included when this says Buncombe County Appeals 2021. Are you saying that they are in the appeals process with everybody else?
Yes. So
but they don't report to Buncombe County about their taxes because they're on township.
Yeah, but they still pay county taxes also.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So they still have the same appeal rights that anyone else has because they still pay Buncombe County tax.
So what is it that they don't pay? They take care of themselves?
They take care of their own municipality tax, the town's tax. Okay, it's like we have, think of the city of Asheville. The city of Asheville has a tax and the county has a tax. Same thing for town of Biltmore. Town of Biltmore has a tax and the county has a tax. And so they have to pay both just like anyone else in any municipality.
Okay, so I asked that because if anybody that's from that area is maybe listening in, they would have an understanding of that because it can be kind of complex. Thank you.
You're welcome, sure. Anything else on this from anybody?
Is no one gonna ask why are they separate? Is that about class and money? What brings them their separation?
No, so this map that you see was created based upon the communities that we created and the census tracts. Okay, so the census tract separates it automatically for us. We didn't draw the line that is the census tract.
What do you mean by census tract?
Well, you know, when there's census tracts all across the county, and when Miranda was zoomed out, you see all the colors of the different polygons. So all of those are census tracts in which the data is collected for the census is within these areas compared to one another. So they keep, you know, they don't keep data compared Oakley to Biltmore Forest. They don't put it all in the same bucket. They keep it separated so they know the difference in who lives there. So that's all about the census tracts. That's why it's separated. Does that make sense, Dwayne? Did I answer your question?
I think it's complicated, and I'm going to understand a little more when I start zooming in on some of these target areas, now that I know I have the capability of doing so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the United States Census, nothing to do with the county.
Understood.
Yeah, it's not the county census. You know, this is the federal government. This is their census tracts. Not anything the county actually has control over. They're the ones that make the decision on where the lines are at, not the county.
Well, the county doesn't have a census, does it?
Well, not independently, they don't. Okay, they will get whatever the federal government reports back to them on the census. Now, I want to make sure, Dwayne.
Keith, we have a hand up raised.
Okay.
Avril.
Hi, Keith, and I just want to address Dwayne's question about why they're separate. They're only separate, Dwayne, when it comes to collection of the tax. They still have to get appraised by our tax office. We still assess them. They're still part of the appraisal. But when it comes to collecting the tax, they have chosen to use their staff to do that instead of the county staff. We have contract agreements with the other towns, Asheville, Weaverville, Montreat, where we collect the taxes and we use our staff to do that work. But Biltmore Forest has the staff on their payroll that does that collection piece. That's when we say separate. That's what that means.
Right. And when I say class, that's what I mean. They have the resources to do that. Correct? Or other municipalities may not be able to afford that.
Well, I think they do, because they do pay us a fee. I will tell you that Weaverville collected their taxes until this year. And when their person retired, instead of hiring somebody else, they said, let me pay the county to do that. But in the past, Weaverville collected, almost all municipalities collected when they had turnover in the staff or so, they said instead of hiring new staff, they would consolidate that with the county.
Okay, thank you.
So Keith, can I go back to one quick question? Since I'm getting all of this information.
Yes, please do. Yes, please.
I appreciate your patience. So with the Biltmore Forest, still with you all being able to access the appraisal of their properties to a certain extent, does that spill over into the other side of Biltmore Forest, which is Shiloh? Because a lot of people in Shiloh area are concerned that Biltmore Forest's tax, it doesn't keep going up. So I don't know about the appraisal process, but the people in Shiloh are saying, well, every year our taxes go up, but we've heard that Biltmore Forest's, their taxes stay the same, or it doesn't go up high like everybody else. And I need to know if that's true so that I can take that back. Or because when Dwayne, when he talks about the fact that being affordable and having the resources and being able to do those type of things that they do independently, does that affect other people, how they're appraised with their taxes?
And the answer is no.
Okay.
Biltmore Forest is separated as a market area. We only compare the sales within Biltmore Forest to Biltmore Forest. So we do not allow any of that those transactions of what homes or property sales for in Biltmore Forest to be compared across Hendersonville Road to Oakley or the Shiloh community. Okay, they stay completely separated when it comes to doing comparable sales because they're not the same market areas. We also are preparing for you, Bobette, related to that, as we do part 3 of this, is that I'm going to show you some what we call tax neighborhoods or market areas. We're going to talk about that and how those are created and show you actually where those are at. And you'll be able to see then that they're separated a little more clearly than maybe on this map, okay?
Keith, this is Debbie. Does anywhere on there show what went to equalization board?
No, these are just appeals, period. We did not separate them to be selected out for formal or informal. But it will tell you, as you look at the individual appeals, which she has on the screen, if you look under appeal type over in the data, second line down, it says informal appeal. And
yes.
If you see one that says formal appeal, then that's the appeal to the Board of Equalization and Review.
Got it.
Okay.
But all of the dots would be inclusive of formal and or informal, and we could tell by the going on to each dot.
That is correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, if that's something that you feel is useful, Miranda can probably separate that out fairly easily. If you want another different kind of dot on here or something to show where those are at, then we can work on that also if that's interesting to you.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So any other questions on this? All right. So as we move on, please remember, if you get a chance to look at it in a little more detail at home or wherever, then if you have questions or you want us to help you kind of navigate through it, then we can do that. Just give me a call and we'll get something set up that we can help you do that. Okay. Okay, so now we'll move on to exemptions. I think we had a question last time about exemptions. So let's go through these 3 major ones. Elderly and the disabled. Currently, there's 3,288 participants in that program. That program is 25,000 or 50% of the appraised value excluded from the value. Okay. Now, this is about value. It's not excluded actually on your tax bill. It's excluded from your value, and then your taxes are calculated on that. So again, that's 25,000 off the assessed value, or 50%, whichever is greater, is what you get if you qualify. The qualifications: income not exceeding $31,900 and the age 65 or older. The disabled veteran, we have 550 participants in that. Up to the first 45,000 of appraised value is excluded from taxes. And that is disabled veterans, 100% disabled, connected to their service in the military, can get that 45,000 off the appraised value.
Chief, did you specify, is that 100%?
No.
And that's only 100%? Would they qualify if they were 50%?
No, it has to be 100% disabled.
Okay.
Yep. Circuit breaker, we only have 8 participants in this program. The program is fairly new, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. This kind of, the General Assembly enacted this, but it's a little bit different. Homeowners with income ranging between $31,900 and $47,850 qualify for a range of deferred tax amounts. Now, this one operates a little differently. It's not about value. It is about deferred taxes. And when I say deferred taxes, it just means that they get deferred until a later time. The taxes would still be paid if something happened and the disqualification event happens, then the taxes would become due and those deferred taxes would be payable at that time. This is calculated based on a % of your income related to your tax bill. Not a lot of people like this program. It never really got a lot of traction from anybody because most people don't like the fact that it's deferred rather than exempt, I think is the bigger reason. So if you look over now in the chart, what we show you is the total property tax reduction by program. So in the elderly and disabled program, there's $1.6 million in taxes. Now that's actual tax dollars that is exempt due to that program. So that's $1.6 million that does not get paid to the county for those people that participate. Disabled veterans, 124,155, and the circuit breaker, 12,820. Well, the elderly and the disabled program has always been the largest participant in it until something changes at the state level, then it probably will remain to be the largest program that folks participate in. Any questions on that? Next. So now we're going to move to the homeowner grant program. I think Philip Hardin is on with us, and Philip is with Health and Human Services. They administer the homeowner grant program. This is not a tax-related program. This is a Health and Human Services program. I'll let Philip explain to you a little bit more about how that operates. You with us, Philip? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you, Philip. I'll let you take over here.
Okay. As Keith stated, the county established the homeowner grant program in the current fiscal year. And we started taking applications on August the 6th for this program. And there were just a few criteria. You had to own the property and live in the property as your primary residence for at least 5 years. Your income had to be less than 80% of the area median income. And then the grant was for $300 for Buncombe County residents. And if you lived in the city of Asheville or the town of Woodfin, you could be eligible for an extra $200 from either of those municipalities. So if you lived in the city of Asheville, the grant could be up to $500. And we received almost 2,000 inquiries between August the 6th and November the 15th. We approved 1,200 of those inquiries, and a little over 700 were denied. Are there questions about the homeowner grant?
I don't know if I have a question. This is Bobette, but $300 for Buncombe County, and if you lived in the city, it was $200. That's kind of small to me. But the earn at or less than 80% of the area median income is, so you turned down, how many people did you turn down compared to how many had applied?
We denied 726 and approved 1,200, but let me tell you that only, I think it was about 19% of those denied applications were for being over income. There were various reasons that people did not get approved. A lot of the biggest number that were not approved were because they were already receiving a tax exemption, such as the elderly, disabled, or the veterans. And that was one of the criteria, is you could not receive 2 different tax exemptions. A homeowner grant, if you're already receiving a tax exemption that Keith just mentioned, then you wouldn't be eligible for this program. And the vast majority of denials were because of that reason.
Okay, thank you.
Phil, could I ask a question to this?
Yes.
80% of area medium income. Do you have a number for the area medium income, or at least a ballpark that I could apply to the 80%?
Yes, I can give you that. For a household size of 2, it's $48,100.
Okay.
For a household size of one, it was $42,100. For a household size of four, for example, it's $60,100.
Wow. Okay. Do we have any idea of how many qualified residents are taking advantage of this? Any way to tell?
Well, we approved 1,263 applications or inquiries out of the 1,900.
And is this a yearly grant that's always available, or is this because of COVID or anything specific?
This was the first year that it was approved by commissioners. And so we will go back to, I did a summary for the commissioners a couple of weeks ago, and we'll see whether or not it's included as far as the budget goes for the coming year. We expended about $479,000 in homeowner grants, and that includes the city of Asheville and the town of Woodfin also.
Yeah, I would like to see this permanently included. That may be a different fight in a different arena.
So why would you get more if you lived in the city of Asheville or the town of Woodfin? At that, where you could get up to $500, where everybody else in Buncombe County would get $300. What made that variance different?
The commissioners approved $300 for any Buncombe County resident, and has already been mentioned. You know, you pay Buncombe County taxes regardless of where you live. The city of Asheville put up their own money to fund the $200 extra on top of that, and the town of Woodfin actually put up dollars also to fund their $200. We didn't, none of the other municipalities actually participated.
Philip, this is Christina. We have a question from Avril. The numbers that you gave for the area medium income, are those already at the 80%?
That is the income, the highest level for 80% of the area medium income. That's correct. The numbers I gave are, if you exceed those numbers, then you're above 80%.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else here for Philip? All right, thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
Next, Burnett. Question came up last meeting about fire districts. I think you got also an email sent to you on this with the link to the fire district map. But I wanted to make sure if there were any other questions about fire districts that we're able to discuss that here. This map, you see the different colored polygons represents each fire district within the county. Each of these fire districts will have their own tax rate, which is included on their tax bill. So any further questions about this that anyone who wanted to discuss? Okay, so we'll move on, Burnett.
Steve, could I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes.
Before we go on, and I'm going back to the grants, I'm wondering, Miranda, is there a way that we can put that information with your ability for us to be able to pinpoint and look at specific information? Will we be able to also look to see who applied for the grants? What we may be able to see gaps where people are available to apply for this. If it's going to be continued, I would want people to be able to take advantage of this. It's an incredible resource.
I don't have that data, but if we're able to get it, we could certainly see if it's something we could do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll try to answer that a little bit too. It's probably possible to pull it, but you would, with the platform that our county IT built for us, we'd probably have to do it manually.
Okay.
Do you guys see any red flags in this? Were you able to even identify, or were you even looking at anything like that, or you just simply processing the applications as they come in?
We processed the applications as they came in. The other thing that we did ask, it wasn't a requirement, and about a little over 30% did not respond. We asked demographic questions such as race and those kinds of demographic stuff, but it was not a requirement for the program.
Okay. So it was more optional.
We tried very hard to make it as simple as possible for people to apply and get approved.
Okay.
So Dwayne, I will follow up on that with our IT department and our county manager's office, because we did have this conversation around what the question you're asking, and there was a little bit of concern for me about publishing the locations because of you're actually somewhat revealing folks' income levels. So I need to discuss that a little bit further to make sure that we want to publish that on a map, but I will let our county management team make that decision. And if we can get the data, then we can talk more about it. Okay.
And Keith, that's a valid question because it was administered by Health and Human Services and bound by state and federal confidentiality laws. That would be a concern of mine also.
Okay. Well, Philip, maybe you just answered the question. Maybe the answer is just no, that we couldn't disclose where those, because if we put a point on the map, it's actually going to be identified by a parcel number in some way. That's the only way that we can put a point on the map, is identified by a parcel number, which is going then to disclose who the owner is of that parcel.
I think I follow you, and you're saying that if there were a high number of participants that were outside of the income or in the income, that would still be revealing if we looked at the data that way.
Right.
I got you.
But I'll do a little further investigation on that with our county management and our legal office, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get there. And if we
Keith?
can, yes.
Avril is mentioning in the chat that we can aggregate that data on zip codes. So we could say, this percentage and, in these various zip codes, and just so it wouldn't be identifying, but rather kind of get to the point of, okay, what areas are we reaching and what areas maybe we're not reaching.
Yeah. So yeah, Dwayne, we could probably give you zip code, but may not get any more granular than that.
That sounds excellent. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
We have that information already.
Perfect.
Okay.
Beautiful.
And Debbie has her hand up.
Keith, thank you, Christina. Keith, that was my thought initially is, this is strictly confidentiality, and I assume when all those numbers, they signed some sort of confidentiality. But I think the key here is, since it is relatively new program, is the publication and awareness that we get that information out to folks, as many as possible, and as many venues. And I don't know where it's already been sent, so maybe I know that effort has been made somewhat, but to get the info out to as many people, assuming that it does continue, instead of saying, well, it went here and it went there, but so that we can get as much information and that program is available out to as many people.
Yeah, so this is the one, Debbie, that you heard Lillian mention earlier, that everyone that got a tax bill got information about the program.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a good distribution on that through that mailing. Okay.
Right, and we, it wasn't me, but someone in a separate meeting, not this meeting, said yes, and how many people rip that invoice out and see what the dollar amount is and throw everything else in the trash.
Well, yeah,
I would never do that.
So you're saying that you did realize you got yours, right?
I know I got mine
Okay.
because you told me I did.
You know, we can mail it to you, but I can't make you read it.
That's what I mean. I know.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on, Bernard. Any more questions? Can we move on?
Please. Hey, Keith, this is Miriam. I have just a quick comment. Yes, I did see that in my tax bill. And so you're right. You can't make people read it. But just a suggestion, I'm on the Buncombe County Tax Department website. And you guys have all of this under, like, you have it all available. And what I mean by that is, you know, when you click on the tax department, tax assessment, you know, it's here, circuit breaker program, senior disability property tax relief. It's all there, and you click on it and there's an application somebody could print. I just wonder, just a comment. I just wonder if there could be because like you have to go to tax assessment and then it's a drop down, but you know, box, and then all of these things come up. I wonder if there could be like a separate like box that would say something about tax relief or something like that. And then inside that could be all of the different, you know, the senior disability, the elderly exemptions, all of those. So just a comment.
I think it's a good comment, Miriam, and I will give you a little bit of information that I am already discussing with one of our vendors of the technology that we have, how to make this more accessible to everybody, and how to get it in everybody's hands and make it easier to find. You know, most of the data is on our website. One complaint that I hear sometimes is that, well, it's there, but you just got to search forever to try and find it, and you have to dig to try and get to it. So that I've heard that, and I'm going to try and respond to that. But as we get later in these meetings and the committee starts talking a little bit about recommendations and what you think's better, then we'll talk more about that on how we could do a better job on that, and so you get some feedback from the committee about some stuff. Okay.
Because once you find it, once you get it, it's very comprehensive. I mean, you know, assuming that you can read, it is very comprehensive, and it actually will pull up. You can actually type in the document. So, you know, you could type in it, save it, and, you know, email it or whatever. So somebody would not even have to have a printer to print it off. So, I mean, that part is really good. And all of the programs are there and very detailed, just maybe a box, you know. So thank you for that.
Yep, we'll explore that more. So thank you for that. And I think Christina's kind of keeping up with the ideas that come up as we move along, so we can revisit those. Is that right, Christina?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Okay. So let's go to the next one, Burnett, where we talk about districts, because I want to talk a little bit about that. So these are tax districts that are included on your tax bills. And again, my note here to the side, taxes are billed and collected for all municipalities except Biltmore Forest. Just reminding you of that again. On the bottom is a link if you want to go see this entire document that's in front of you. It's actually 2 pages. But what this is telling you is the different tax rates for where you may live. So for instance, if you live in the county and the Jupiter Fire District, then it tells you what your tax rate is. Or if you live in the county and the city only, it tells you what your tax rate would be. So you can go here and get your tax rate and then do the calculation on your value if you want to get an estimate of taxes, or if you just want to know, you know, what is the other people, different areas paying in fire district taxes and municipalities and so on. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, next. So now we're going to go to sales ratio. This came up in our meeting, that what is the sales ratio? So this is a good time to talk about that, because we're going to start talking more and more, especially in the next session about sales ratio and why it's important, but I'm going to share a little bit with you now so we can start thinking about this. So the sales ratio that you hear me mention, and I might say ratio, I may say sales assessment ratio, I may say sales ratio, it's all the same, okay? It's just a number. And it's the relationship between the assessment and the sales price expressed as a percentage. So if you look at the formula there, we take the sales price divided by the assessment, and it gives us a ratio. And what that tells us as we're doing analysis, we can take a quick look at these ratios to do as a measure of what kind of job that we're doing. So in this example in front of you, what this is showing you is that if you paid $100,000 for your property, and I have it assessed at $80,000, then the ratio for me would be 80%. So that one number is what I'm concentrating on as we do analysis. The 80% tells me the level of assessment for your property. So does that help a little bit better understanding of, when I use this terminology of what that means and where it comes from? Okay, next. So that ratio then is used, we report that ratio to the North Carolina Department of Revenue every quarter. This is where that sample data that we showed you in that spreadsheet, everybody got that spreadsheet of 460 some parcels to make your selections from. They send us a sample and it's just random, and we send it back to them, and then they create the ratio, which reports back to us at the county level of saying, based on your sample, the Buncombe County as a whole, the median ratio was 98.73% after the 2021 reappraisal. So median, of course, but what is reporting back to us is that for the most part, the assessments were 98% of the sales prices. So this number then is used back to the county for a few different things, and we'll talk about those as we move forward. But this is somewhat, we watch this about how, when we do reappraisals, we watch this when we're talking about public service assessments and stuff like that. Next. So the sales assessment ratio, I want to show you a little bit of an idea of what happens with it. So in between the two yellow lines you see on this graph, you see that 0.85% and the 1.15%. So the North Carolina Department of Revenue and the General Assembly says, or actually the General Assembly says in the statute that between these two, 0.85 and 1.15, but the county can make a decision on your own on when you want to do a reappraisal, as long as you do it every 8 years, okay? But when you go out of that line and you drop below 8.85 or you go over 1.15, now that triggers another part of the statute that says now the Department of Revenue is going to write us a letter and says you're outside the acceptable range on your sales ratio and you will need to do a reappraisal. So you see one here in the middle, that's the green line. So if everything in the county was assessed at its sale price, every parcel that we looked at was assessed at the actual sales price, everything would be at 1. But that's not the way that we do it in mass appraisal. So 1/121, again, the sales ratio was 0.987%. So 98.7% of the assessment of the sales price. So that's, that's where you want to be after a reappraisal. But look what happens over time. So we move forward into Q1, which was January through May, 0.92%. Q2, June through August, 0.89%. Q3, September through October, 0.88. And now the last quarter of 21, Q4, November through December, the sales ratio was down to 86%. So what's happening here is that this is an indicator of appreciation in the market. So sales, the appreciation of your homes and sales is getting higher, but the assessment's staying static. So as that increases and the assessment stays static, then the ratios start dropping. And when you get down to this 86%, then you're getting ready to go under the threshold in which the Department of Revenue is and the General Assembly is saying that you should stay within. We will get an official report on this April of 2022. The North Carolina Department of Revenue will send us an official report that tells us what they report the sales ratio study to be. But as you can see, if you look at the 0.86%, we're expecting it to be fairly low. Okay. Now, where do you want to go to from there? So any questions about that? Did I make that confusing?
Keith, one quick question, if I can. This is Jonathan. So I know you had mentioned before that if you go below a ratio of 0.85, then it triggers a new assessment. So is that, if it goes below that in 2022, is that going to trigger another assessment?
Yeah. So in April, when we get the official report from the Department of Revenue, if that ratio falls below 85%, then they will put us on notice that we've been triggered by the statute and we must schedule a reappraisal. Now, the statute gives us 2 years to complete that, so it would become effective in the 3rd year. So let's say that we get that letter in 2022, and maybe it triggers it, maybe it don't, but let's say it does, then we would be looking at moving forward to 2024, 2025. So these are going to be these are going to be the years that it's going to happen probably anyway. But remember, 2 years, they're going to give you notice that they give you 2 years to have one completed. So wherever that falls forward. So if we get the letter this year, if we get the letter in 23, then it still goes out 2 years. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I do have a question. I'm trying to figure this out real quick.
Okay.
So a person that would, since the sales assessment ratio, if it goes down to a certain point and where it is going now, is that when people would, from outside of here, would want to buy into our county because the sale is the appraisal rate and what the houses are cheaper, and they'll hold on to it until it goes up again? Does that make sense?
No, actually, what it's indicating, my bet, is maybe the opposite, is that the price of homes are increasing.
Okay.
It just means that the price of the homes now is increased over what the assessed value is.
So that means that now because what I'm seeing is, especially in my area, a lot of people are moving here, buying houses, and once that goes up, then they sell.
Well, now you're talking about general real estate market conditions. Okay, if I buy a house for $100,000 and I keep it for 2 years and now it's worth $150,000, then maybe I'm going to sell it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was just an investment for me and I held it and I'm going to sell it, and that goes on. But that don't have so much to do with assessment. That's the real estate market just in general. Okay. These ratios is looking at that market compared to the assessment and saying, like in this 0.86, the assessment now is 86% of the sales prices. Okay. So it shows that gap is getting wider and wider as the further we go along.
Okay. I'm going to be real smart when this is over. I'm doing very well.
Well, we have a few openings if you want a job. Yep. Okay. Next. Questions. Okay. So if you want me to go back to any of that, then I'm happy to. We can talk about any questions that you have. But now we're going to move to the random sample if no one has any other questions. And then we'll talk about the data that we have in the random sample that you guys did. So anything before we go there? Burnett, do you want to show those? I think I emailed you the last email I sent you has the updated presentation in it.
Keith, this is what you're referring to, right?
Yes, correct. Is that the first one or is that?
Yeah, hang on one second. Let me just get there. Sorry, I got way ahead of myself there.
It's okay.
Am I going the wrong direction here? Hang on.
You're good.
Sorry. There you go. There's the first one.
Okay. So after you guys sent us the parcel numbers or the selection today, we pulled the data out of the system. So this is what you had asked us to share with you. So let me focus on a few things on the screen so you'll kind of can, as we go through them, your eyes can maybe just kind of normally go there. You have the parcel number in the top. That's what that long string of numbers are. That's the parcel number. Beside of that, I'm just giving you a general area. You see Riceville on that one. I'm just giving you a general area of where the parcel is located, Riceville, East Asheville. I'm telling you what the parcel sold for and the date that it sold. This one, October the 7th, 2020, sold for $125,000. So you can see a picture of the house. Now in the blue boxes, here's what you see. Just focus really on the bottom numbers. On the right-hand column, you see the last 2020. That is prior to the 2021 reappraisal. So prior to the 2021 reappraisal, this house was assessed at $108,600. The next column over to your left, you see $114,000. After the 2021 reappraisal, that's what it was assessed at. So it went from 108,000 to 114,000. Sold in October of 2020 for 125. We have it assessed at 114,600. Now, also I put another number up here, and we don't have to talk a whole lot about this, but some we may get into a little bit more. But what I put here for you is that we do adjusted sales prices based upon data, because in the mass appraisal, we use data that sometimes maybe can get a little older. So we go all the way back to January of 2020, and now you're in January of 2021, and we want to make sure that that sales price that happened in January of 20 is equal to today's market in January of 21. So we do what we call adjusted sales price. We take the 125,000 and adjust it up to whatever the January 1 sales price could be, based upon a rate of appreciation across the county, which we use 6%. So we're saying that you're getting 6% appreciation in your home values on general across the county. So that's what that number means. This house was built in 1959, 656 square feet, 1 bath. That's over in the far right. I'll put a few numbers there for you that we can talk about as we go forward. So you see the house, you see the size of it, and you see the sales price and the assessment. Any questions? Now we're going to walk through quite a few of these. So anything else that you want to talk about just on this screen before we move forward? Okay, next. Okay, this one's in Leicester. Sold October of 2020, 625,000. You look down at the bottom on the left-hand column, you'll see it's currently assessed at $663,200. Over on the far right, house was built in 1946, 3,034 total square feet. Now I put on here a breakdown. 770 square feet of that's in the basement, 2,264 square feet on the main level, 3 baths. So I think what was important to you guys that you wanted to see was, the comparisons. 2020 assessment was 289,700. 2021 it increased to 663,200 and sold for 625. Next. Reams Creek. Sold September of 2020, 256,000. House was built in 1970, 1,184 square feet, 1 bath on a crawl space. We currently have it assessed at $234,400. So again, sold for 256. The assessment currently is at 234,400. Next.
Keith, can I ask one quick question? Sorry, this is Jonathan.
Go ahead.
The adjusted sales price on the right hand top right hand side. Can you just tell me at a low level what if you've got a sale price and you've got an assessed value, what's the adjusted sales price and why is that important?
Yeah, so it's important because the analysis that we do for the reappraisal is really based upon an adjusted sales price based upon the date that it's sold. So you see this one sold in March of 2020, but
Gotcha.
the actual appraisal date is January of 2021. So we're almost a year out from when it sold.
So basically a time in a long form appraisal, it would be a time. That's the time adjustment between.
That's all it is. The time adjustment.
Okay.
So
perfect.
And for those others, again, I'll say that what we're saying here is that if you paid 280 in March, all the indicators across the county as far as appreciation says that by the time we got to January, the property would be worth $289,000. So that represents the value as of January 2021. So it is it's a time adjustment. It's an appraisal methodology. Everybody does it. Independent appraisers do it. So it's not something that we do that others don't.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Keith, one point of clarification. So I'm seeing a trend in the last several properties that were shared, and I want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly. The column, the last 2020 fair market value adjustment cost is what the house was last appraised at in comparison to the current appraised value.
That is true.
So in this example, it almost doubled.
Right. It went from 156,000 to 277. And that house is in Black Mountain, built in 2015, 960 square feet, two bath on a crawl space. So yeah, that's why I said, Burnett, and what for everybody. In the blue lines, all the numbers, which we should have taken out, I guess, but the bottom number, just focus on the bottom number. The 156.4 was prior to the reappraisal. The 277,000 was as of the reappraisal, and up the top is the sales price of actually 280,000. So the sales price tells us what the home's worth. That's what someone was willing to pay for this property. It was advertised on an open market, probably in the multiple listing service, probably sold by a realtor. So we qualified the sale as being a valid sale of 280,000. And that's what helped create the 277,000. Next. North Asheville. This house sold October of 2020 for $540,000. House was built in 1930, 2,362 square feet, 2-story, 1.5 bath. Prior to the reappraisal, $513,000. After the reappraisal, $546,000. Next. Fairview. Sold July of 2020, $438,500. House was built in 2002, 3,100 square feet, 3.5 baths. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at $285,000. After the reappraisal, assessed at $436,500. Next. Reynolds Community. This is a townhome. Sold in October of 2020 for $297,500. Built in 1986, 2-bath, 1,406 square feet. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at $256,000. After the reappraisal, 293,900. Next. Black Mountain. Sold in January of 2020 for 322,000. 1993 house, 1.5 stories, 2 baths, 2,032 square feet on a crawl space. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at 209,000. After the reappraisal, assessed at 324,600. Next. Swananoa Townhome. Sold September of 2020, 360,000. Built in 2005, 1,899 square feet, 2.5 baths. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at 255,000. After the reappraisal, assessed at 356,600. Next. Leicester. July of 2020, sold for 395,500. Built in 2019, 1,980 square feet, 2 bath with a basement. This was new under the assessment, so you see the $70,000 prior to the reappraisal. However, the house sold in 2020, or the house was assessed in 2021 at 411,800. So this was a new construction that got added during the year of 2020, and then the first assessment on the actual structure was for the 2021 reappraisal. So again, sold for 395, assessed at 411,000. Next. Pine Cliff Condo in Asheville, March of 2020, sold for 191,500. Built in 1987, 1,211 square feet, 2-bedroom upper unit. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at 154,100. After the reappraisal, assessed at 191,900. Next. Black Mountain, January of 2020, sold for 403,500. House built in 2004, 1.5 story, 2,270 square feet, 2 bedrooms on a crawl space. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at 274,700. After the reappraisal, assessed at 406,600. Next. Beverly Hills, East Asheville. Sold July of 2020, 340,000. House built in 1949, 1,332 square feet, 2 bath on a basement. Prior to the reappraisal, was assessed at 272,200. After the reappraisal, assessed at 340,800.
Keith, there is a question that may interest the committee. Is there an additional tax amount due if the house is sold for more than the appraised amount?
No.
Thank you.
You're in the year that you receive your tax bill is calculated on your total assessed value. Okay, so your tax bill would have been generated on 272,000 for the year of 2020. Although it's sold in 2020 for 340, we are not allowed to change the value in a non-reappraisal year. So the value had to stay at the 272,000 until the next reappraisal. Next. Skyland, South Asheville, January of 2020, sold for 219,000. 1960, not built in 1962, 941 square feet, 1 bath, basement, renovated. Prior to the reappraisal, 108,800. After the reappraisal, or at the reappraisal, 226,700. Next. Fairview, sold January of 2020, 380,000. House built in 2016, 1.25 stories, 2,268 square feet, 3.5 baths on a crawl space. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at 362,000. At the reappraisal, assessed at 439,400. Cedarwood condo, Asheville, May of 2020, sold for $254,000. Built in 1985, 1,282 square feet, 1.25 story, 2-bath, renovated. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at $165,000. At the reappraisal, assessed at $223,400. Next. Candler, sold October of 2020 for $350,000. House built in 2006, 3 baths, 2,350 square feet, additional living unit. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at $242,000. At the reappraisal, assessed at $391,600. Next. Black Mountain, sold January of 2020 for $275,000. House built in 2007, 1,440 square feet, 2-story, 2.5-bath on a crawl space. Prior to the reappraisal, assessed at $188,900. At the reappraisal, assessed at $291,400. Candler, sold in June of 2020 for $175,000. 1939 house, 1,092 square feet, basement, 1 bath, 2.5 acres. Prior to the reappraisal, $177,100. At the reappraisal, valued at $217,200. Next. Okay. That's the random sample that you guys chose from the list. Is there anything you'd like for me to go back to, or you have questions? Did I go too fast? Were you able to see the numbers? Was it too much? Please, questions.
That's Keith, Jonathan again. I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time here, but this is sort of what I've been asking for since almost the beginning, and so I appreciate everything that you put out there just now, and the fact that that you can pull those random sample sets and be able to show those is really nice, at least nice for me in this committee and trying to come up with some strategies for the commissioner. So thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm sorry, Keith.
Yeah.
I noticed from the assessed value and the reassessed value, there's no date on those. Would that be useful information if we knew when it was assessed and when it was reassessed, or is that we should already know that?
So if you look back at this one that we're looking at on the screen, and that right-hand column, that's the value as of the last reappraisal. So that would have been January of 2017. Okay.
Oh.
All those values would have been January of 2017.
Thank you.
And then you got the comparison beside of it for January of 2021.
And then so some of these where you get such a big swing from the market, from like where you got on the screen now, from 177 to 217. If you were someone on a fixed income, would this have a negative impact on your taxes? These values changing this way?
Well, it could have an impact on your taxes. However, remember, we're talking about value here.
Okay.
And we at this point in the reappraisal, we would have no idea what your tax bill would be. It could go up, it could go down, it could not change. Because remember, at the point of reappraisal, the tax rate has not been set. So until the commissioners set the tax rate, and then we do the multiplication toward the value, that's the only point in time that we know what your taxes are going to be. So depending on where the commissioners set that rate, if it goes up or down or no change, that's when you'll be able to determine the effect on your taxes.
Understood.
So this one was not that large of an increase,
right?
177 to 217, and if the rate came down in Candler, which the county rate did come down, I would have to look back at the fire rate to see what happened, but there's a good possibility when no larger of an increase on this one is that these folks may not have saw a change in their tax bill.
Okay.
So Keith, this is Miriam. There was a good PDF that Christina shared with everybody on January 27th, and it was a handout for your neighbors and community members. It was called Tax Rate versus Property Appraisal.
Right.
And when you look at that PDF, this is a PDF because I think we hear this all the time. People don't understand valuation versus taxes, tax rate. The tax rate is set by not the tax department. The tax rate is set by the board, the county commissioners. And so that PDF that Christina shared, it was after one of our meetings, that particular PDF, because it basically says how property taxes are calculated, and it gives an example, which I think is brilliant when you look at it. When you look at the tax year 2020, it pulled a property in Leicester, and it took the valuation, it took the tax rate at the time, the total property tax, and then it dropped it down and calculated all that for 2021. The tax rate went down. Obviously, the total tax bill went up. But I think that because like this is a common theme that we hear, like we keep hearing it over and over and over in this committee. And I think there is a really big disconnect in maybe how property taxes are really calculated. We have valuation. North Carolina general statute says that the tax assessed value should be what market value is, which is kind of what this pulls. But then the tax rate is set by the county commissioner. So I think that PDF is kind of brilliant in terms of if it could be somewhere on the website, if an example like this could be put out there, because then I think it really kind of pulls the two together. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And we can get a sample calculation like that on the website. I'm
going to reply all to everybody and or actually, if I do that, you won't get the PDF, but just for everybody that's on the committee and actually all of the county too, it was the one that Christina sent Thursday, January 27th at 12:16 p.m. And it is called Tax Rate versus Property Appraisal. So I think it's pretty brilliant. Whoever put that together, I'm not sure who did that, but it was pretty good.
Miriam, I can send that back out to the committee tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you, Christina.
Yeah.
Of course.
I know we're about to run over time, Christina, but let me go back to Dwayne's question because I want to share something with you, Dwayne. Is that the taxes on that particular house that we were looking at that went to 177? There's a good possibility that tax bill decreased. If you calculate the rate that was there before the reappraisal and the rate that was after the reappraisal, there's a good possibility that tax bill on that property actually decreased. So proven a point of what I've always stressed to people is that just because your value goes up does not mean your tax bill will go up. It has to also be related to the tax rate. Okay. You're on mute, Dwayne.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Thank you. That's something that you're probably going to have to repeat again. I think we're going to have to really beat that into our brains, that difference, because I keep going back and forth too, and it's easy for me to do that.
Okay.
I want to lump them together.
Maybe what I could talk to the team about at one of the meetings is that we could use some of these examples from the random sample and actually do the tax calculation on them and show you how that changed after the reappraisal and the rate change. And maybe that will bring it together. So I'd be happy to put something like that together for you to actually visually see that calculation and how that works.
Well, the better we understand this as we go out and advocate to others, these are the type of questions that I know I'm going to encounter. For
Correct.
sure. Right.
Keith, and this is Bobby. I just want to say, if it's more simplified for, I'm not a real estate person. I'm not a tax assessor. I'm just a community person. And I'm just saying, we can put stuff on websites but if it's over their heads, if you could just simplify it more so that when I go back to my community and I have something for them, it's like, it's cut and dry. You make it sounds complex, but it's really simplified. So if maybe the buzzwords or the lingo that's used could be simplified so that it could be understandable, because some of the things that you're saying, it might make sense to me, but if for somebody else out there that may be struggling with something, or they're trying to get a house, or whatever, they may not understand that. So I would ask that if there's a way that it maybe can just make it a little more real. And I'm like, Dwayne, I'm in the crosshays. You're gonna have to keep telling us, because it's not something that I visit every day. So it's not something that I know. So as we continue to go through this journey over and over and over again, then that we can keep that in mind, that I'd be happy.
And we will, as a team, as we put together the next meeting, I'll have this conversation with everybody, and we'll discuss how we think we can approach it. So it's a little easier to just kind of connect with, because it can be difficult to connect with. It definitely can. There's a lot of components to it. So we will try and do that, Bob. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're 4 minutes over time. So I want to just thank you for a good session and good feedback that we're receiving from you all. And as a reminder, next session, we're going to hear the results of the survey on the February 23rd, as well as Keith's part 3 of his the local property appraisal information. And I will send out that handout again tomorrow, as well as our PowerPoint presentation from this evening. And I want to thank everybody for your time. And have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.